this just broke. This is a stock that I have mentioned in the past, which I thought was dead. This is Kodak, and it is breaking out today. I haven't even had time to see what the news is, but Kodak, which I've mentioned, I don't know, 3 or 4 times over the last 6 months, it's coming to fruition. Um, that's a bullish chart. And Kodak, I don't know what the heck is happening today. I'll look at it and I'll report back. But in a red tape, that's that's a pretty good performance in my opinion. And then
I
before we
haven't.
go, I want to brag on Berna because I was going to mention this before, and then I realized that Berna was moderating the five. I mean, they've thrown all Five Below, FIVE. They've thrown a tremendous amount at this stock, and look how it's held in. It's actually gone up in earnings, which a lot of stocks have not done, and it's just been an absolute champ. So a tip of the hat to you. I'd love to have you go through, why you bought it initially and the ensuing buys. But what a homer for all of our members.
Well, thank you.
I
It's
haven't.
funny because you were actually before you mentioned that you were looking at this chart. I was actually, I was just going to mention it briefly today because I had sort of a timely but very qualitative thought. So, um, this is a stock that I attended. I think it was maybe the first analyst day that they'd done in a long time in 2022, and I was so impressed by the company, and I bought some. I'd been following it since the IPO, but it had always been a little too rich for my blood. I definitely leaned to more, the value in GARP names. And I was so impressed by both their merchandising and their operations and sourcing that I decided, and, it was always a great story because this is one of the only growth retailers left in America that's growing, at the time, square footage, number of stores by like 15% a year. And they were comping positive. So you had like a 20% grower between comps and new stores and operating leverage, 20% plus, to find that kind of compounder in retail in America, very rare. So everybody was crowding into this stock because it's such a rare beast in the retail area, a true growth company. It was never really cheap enough for me, but I bought it in 2022, probably in 140s, 150s, on its way to north of 200. And, something I've been working on in the last 5 years is trying to hold my winners, right? Because I am by nature contrarian. I'm always willing to step into the breach. And there have been a lot of like 10 baggers that I turned into three baggers, right? By, buying them when they were totally out of favor and then selling them, when they recovered to a reasonable valuation. But then they went on to like an inflated valuation and also, grew earnings, beyond what anyone had imagined. So I'm trying to get better on not selling too early. In this case, it hurt me because the company made some missteps that were totally self-inflicted. Operational stuff, like they cut labor too much in the stores. They sort of rested on their laurels too much on marketing and didn't bring enough on merchandising. I apologize, and not bringing enough new merchandise into the store. So they got a little lazy. They got a little greedy on the cost side with cutting labor, but kind of totally fixable things like the merchandising issues. The merchants were mostly still there. So it's not like the people who had created the magic had gone away. But when they went from just knocking it out of the park to a rare period of them for negative comps, the company lost two-thirds of their value. And so that goes back to kind of late 2024, early 2025, where it got in to the 70s. And that's where I doubled my position, kind of mid 70s. And that's when I think I'd mentioned it, on the way down. I kind of caught the falling knife and said it's maybe time to inch in. But then when it got to the 70s, that's when I doubled my position. And then it went to the 60s. And then I, brought it up again by another 50%, essentially tripling that initial position down near the lows, which I think were around $56. So anyway, was pounding the table in the 60s and 70s. I think I sold a little bit when it doubled, like maybe like 25% or 30% when it doubled, but I've held the rest. And, it's
Good for
getting to the
you.
point where it's fairly valued now. And I was thinking, okay, should I trim this? Because it is one of my largest positions. But then qualitatively, something's happened in the last week or two that makes me think that there's going to be another leg here. And that is, and this might be familiar to anyone who has teens, tweens, or even kids in their 20s around.